We've learned the math last chapter. Now we're going to look how it applies to science. And so we're going to look at how to do the problem in math and differently in science and what it means. So we'll look at this first one in math. Okay. And so your problem basically is going to be this. And we're going to multiply these together. And then I'm going to show you how to do it differently in math, differently in science, and differently in... actually, let me change this a little bit. Let's put a 0.5 in front of it. Because that's how we're going to do it in statistics. And I'll show you how that's going to work. 0.5, and we're just going to square that. So I'm going to put this 0.5b. And in this case, these are going to be different variables. One's uppercase, one's lowercase. So when we relate the math to the science, just so we can see that there's an application of some of the stuff we do. You probably did some of this, not this level of it, but some of this in 7th grade. Which is good, because you were there the whole school year. So hopefully we're able to do this pretty good. 0.5 times 0.5 is 0.25. B squared. Big B, little b. Big B, little b. And 0.25. B squared. And I guess that makes sense that everything is 0.25. Because there's basically, if I... each one of these boxes is a quarter of the full box, right? So if I added all these together, I'd have a 1. So I'd have a whole thing. So let's go ahead and add this, and I'll kind of let you know what's going on with it. So if I put this down, I get 0.25 b squared plus, we'll add that together, so that's 0.5 bb, and then I would have 0.25 b squared. Okay, so that's math. And so I'm going to translate this into science. So in science, we wouldn't write it b squared. In science, what we do is we would write it 0.25. We would write it like that. They just don't write b squared. They just write the double b. But that's the same thing, right? Okay, in statistics, we wouldn't write 0.25, 0.5. We might. And there's different ways to write it. So we could write all kinds of ways. But basically what this is going to result in, and this is basically a mix between two things, two living creatures, and they create more living creatures. So in the case, this might be a flower, it might be people, it might be animals. In this example, it would be people, and this would represent eyes. Okay, so basically, 0.25 is the same thing as 25% of the offspring would have the BB genes. 50% of the offspring would have the genes, and 25% of the offspring would have BB. Okay, let's see if we remember what all that stuff means. So if you remember from your lessons way back then, is there's dominant and recessive traits. Okay, and so the big B is the dominant trait, and the little b is the recessive trait. Dominant always beats the recessive. In eye color, Big B is brown. Does anybody know what the little b is? It's blue. Okay, and so looking at the statistics, that means 25% of the offspring is going to have 2 genes of brown, which is going to result in brown eyes. 50% of the offspring is going to have a recessive gene of blue, but also a brown gene. That means that they're going to have brown eyes. And 25% is going to have both blue, and so they would have blue eyes. Okay? And so just looking from this, the offspring are going to be 75% chance of having brown eyes and a 25% chance of having blue eyes. Okay, so that is basically what we're going to do. I do have a little worksheet that I'm going to work a little bit with you on this, and so I can show you what I want you to do. And we're just doing this so we can kind of cross over so we know that the math that we're doing has some kind of application. Okay, and the classes that you would do this in, as you do this, if anybody's in some of the ag classes, you'll learn about this stuff. The reason why you learn about this stuff is, well, with humans, honestly, it is a lot more complicated than just blue and brown eyes, being that there are, well, if you look at somebody's brown eyes, they're not always the same brown, right? So there's something else to it. And of course, there's more than just blue and brown. There's green, there's yellow, there's stuff like that. But with plants, it's a little bit more simple. And people do this all the time with plants. A green pea plant is crossed with a yellow pea plant. Okay, and this is how I basically want you to do this. G, that's my green. So obviously the big G would be green. What is the little g going to be? Yellow. All right, so this is what I want you to do. I want you to go ahead and just cross it up like this. G. And instead of doing G squared, we're going to just do little g. Okay, and from the result of this, we're going to get lots of different seeds. We're going to get green plants out of this, out of the seeds, and we're going to get yellow. Okay, what percentage is going to be green? It's going to be 50% green and 50% yellow. Right? Because the dominant's going to win here. Okay, so that's what I'm going to have you do on all these, and that's all we're doing. We're going to fill out the box, and we're going to do the statistics of it. On the back, they're going to make you do a little bit more, sort of. So you're going to have to know a few words. So I'm going to draw my little Punnett square here, just like when we did multiplication. Okay, just remember, and again, this is old vocabulary. This one right here means same. This one means different. So a dominant brown mouse. So if it's homogeneous, dominant brown mouse, that means that mouse would be BB, is crossed with a hedged brown mouse. So that means it's going to be, and tan is the recessive color, right? So you're just going to fill this out. So see if you can fill this out real quick. Should be pretty easy, right? Because you are multiplying, but, you know. Okay. What color are all the offsprings going to be? Are they all going to be 100% brown? Remember, the big B is the color that will show because it's dominant. So since all 4 boxes have a big B, that means 100% brown. But of course, this is why if you have a bunch of brown mice and all of a sudden you have a tan mouse, you can have a tan mouse if these two would cross, because then you could potentially have a recessive gene pop out. And that's how that works. Okay. So let's go ahead and try to finish all of this up. And we might have a short video at the end.